Hey guys, what is up? Welcome to video 2 of this series on the pet adoption UI that we started making. As you can see here, this is where we're sitting. We have our menu screen from the previous video, and here we have the second screen that's going to display a search bar to search for pets, a list of icons here that looks like it should filter based on what type of animal you're looking for, and then of course a list of the animals in particular with photos and information. If we think about here, if we do some pre-planning of how we're going to structure this, it looks like we've got a row here, which could be an app bar, but what we're going to do is build it out as a row because we can customize it how we see fit. Below we have a container with some rounded edges and a custom background color. And inside that we have a column with the search bar, and below the search bar we have what we're going to use as a list view, because you can see that that actually continues here, and we can imagine that this is something that could change over time, so we want it to be dynamic. So it's going to be a horizontal list view followed by a vertical list view, because here you could imagine there should be able to be many search results here. There could be more than just this two, and we can imagine that the user would scroll. Oops, don't want to do that. The user could scroll here, and that's what we want to do. Also thinking ahead, what we want to look at is creating an animal object, because you can see we have a familiar pattern here in a lot of apps with like a list view and then a detailed screen. And in the detailed screen, we want to be able to pass this animal. We don't want to pass the name, this text, its age, all separately. We want to create an object here and pass the object. So let's get started on just having that in mind. Let's get started on the screen. What I'm going to do is create another Dart file. And this time we'll call it adoption screen. You can call it whatever you want, and if I don't want to have a typo here, adoption screen. Stateless or stateful? I'm going to go for a stateful widget right off the bat, because we want to be able to keep track of here in this list view here. When we click on one of these filters, we want to actually, we're not going to implement this ourselves, but we can imagine that when this app is actually built, it would need to filter this. So we want to keep track of the state. So let's go ahead and make a stateful widget. Import the material. And then what I'm going to do here is go back to the main. And for the moment, I'm just going to replace this completely. So we won't see our menu screen for the moment. Obviously, when we come back later, it's not going to be like this. But here you see, now we just have the black blank container here. Okay, so as I was saying, let's plan ahead a little bit. And outside of this class, I'm just going to define a class of animal, because we're going to want to create these animals as objects and pass them from the list here to the detailed screen that we'll create next. Okay, once we have that, let's go into our adoption screen and just create the list of these two animals. So let's make a list of animal and call them animals. So the first one, let's say animal name. And you see I've already made a mistake. We need to define the initializer inside the class. So the structure of this screen is the biggest structure is a column, right? So let's just make a column to start with. Children. The first thing will be a row. Okay, and again we're having the same issue that we had before. We're not inheriting the theme. So what we're going to do is just add material as a parent. Okay, cool. And a lot of times you won't need to actually to do this because a lot of screens are built using a scaffold, which we're not using for our design here. But if you use a scaffold, you also inherit the theme and you don't have to worry about that ugly underlining thing happening to you. Okay, so let's go ahead and give this thing some upper padding. Now we have this row, we want to push everything apart from each other, right? So that's going to be the main axis alignment, space between. Alright, so everything is properly spaced here. Let's give some padding to the row because you can see we've got some padding. The location, this is actually going to be a column, right? You guys saw that coming from a mile away. So location, below that we're going to have text, and I'm going to say Lyon because that's where I'm at. And actually, this is a row itself, right? Because you have to include the icon. So let's try and find that in the font awesome icons map something. Map marker. I find that I usually like the alt better than the map marker. I think I prefer the alt most times. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, that's not so bad. That's almost, I wonder if she used that one actually in her design. So that's perfect. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring in the color, the primary color. So if you type in theme.of dot primary color, this brings in the color that you defined in the theme data. So we defined our main color here, and because we have the material now, remember those yellow underline bars? That's the inheritance that I was talking about, that this has to inherit the theme data using the material. That provides a link so we can inherit this theme data. And because of that, we can just hit that, and voila, we have our theme color, our primary theme color. After, it looks like the words, actually we've got two different here. Let's go ahead and let's try something here, and let's make these two separate text widgets. Okay, so nothing really changed. So now that'll allow us to give a style, two different styles. That's the main goal, right? So font weight. I don't know if it's quite bold, but I will give it 700. Font size, let's do, this is always a shot in the dark, 26. No, it's too big. That looks pretty good, and I'm actually going to lighten up the font weight. Yeah, okay. I'll buy it. I'm buying it, if you guys are. Okay, let's just go ahead and copy and paste the same style. We want the same font size, but we want this to be much lighter. That's okay. That's okay. All right. For the text of the location, again, I'm just gonna paste it just to give us a shortcut. Afterwards, let's see. Font weight, I'm not sure what we want for that one. But what we gotta worry about here is the color. So the color here is going to be, let's take the primary color of the app and let's play with the opacity. So let's just save that quickly. Font weight, first of all, is too much. But now let's play with the opacity. Opacity, cut it in half. Okay, maybe a little less, and the font weight needs to go down quite a bit too. And the font size. Let's go ahead and change this. I think this should be smaller. Okay, let's go with that. Also, let's look at the alignment here. These should be center aligned. I'm not sure if it is that by default, so I'm going to go ahead and just define that explicitly. This is my row cross axis. Like I said in the last video, the row is main axis is X, right? Because it's horizontal. So the cross is the Y, and I want to align these things centered in the Y direction, and nothing changed, so it looks like it was already that by default. Okay, so next order of business here. After this padding, that's where we finish our customized app bar. Now I want to create a container. I got my eyes on that rounded corner, different color background here. So that's what we're going to try to work out. So actually what I want to do, I think, is get rid of this height. And like I said, I want this to take up the rest of the space. So let's maybe wrap this in expanded. For the moment, let's make this, I think this is easier. I don't see the downside to it yet. So now you see we have the padding only at the top. So now we've got this nice red container here with rounded edges. Let's go ahead and change this. I'm going to do the same trick I did with the text and use the primary color. Where are we here? Use the primary color and change the opacity. I think that'll give us what we want with opacity, and it's pretty low. Let's go down to 0.2. Now even less. 0.1. I think even less. This is really splitting hairs. Let's go with that. I think that's okay. So now if we look at our design, the next thing what we got to do is create a column inside of this container that we just created, right? The column is going to have the search bar, the list view, and then the vertical list view. So let's go ahead and find the right spot to start doing this, right? So we have our expanded container with the box decoration. So now we need to have a child. And the child is going to be a column. And the children. Okay, so where do we start? I'm going to make a row, because that row is going to be the search bar with those icons. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, we are getting a lot of errors here. So what are we seeing? The input decorator, which is typically created, cannot have an unbounded width. Okay, let's see if we can wrap this thing in a container. Sometimes in a row you need to wrap text fields and other widgets in a, okay. So that seems to have worked here. Doesn't look pretty yet, but we'll deal with that. So for the row, we want to have his padding on the outside and the top. So let's go ahead and let's add padding. Next thing we want to do, we want to have this white background and get rid of the underline. So how are we going to do that? What we could do is wrap this row in a container and make the color white. There's too much padding on the vertical here. What if I just get rid of the vertical? That was not what I expected. Let's see if I can just undo that. Because I'm looking at the here. I changed the padding of the wrong widget. Okay, that looks a little bit better. It's definitely not our final. It's definitely not our final design. Let's go ahead and try to get rid of the underline, because that's not part of the design. Where is it now? The text field. So let's say inside the decoration, border, outline, input border, border side. I know that there's a border side dot none. Okay, that we ought to be able to do. Let's see if that. Okay, that gets rid of our underline, and it actually improved the look of the padding a little bit as well. Let's see. Definitely want to gray out the icons, so let's go ahead and what I want to do next actually is separate the app bar from this container. Next order of business is the list view here of the animals. And just like we did in the previous video, let's go ahead and think ahead here and let's make a list of strings. This will help us to not repeat ourselves later. Alright, so now we've thought ahead, and when we build these icons, it will have been something more dynamic that can change over time, and we won't have to write the same code over and over again. So since the reason we actually chose to have a stateful widget was so we could have this variable here. Actually, I'm gonna initialize that with a value of 0. Why not? It should. There's no reason for it to be null. So we'll initialize that with a 0. Then we'll go ahead and create a function that is build animal icon. And we'll pass in the index. Has to go after the padding. So let's go there. We can't even see it, so let's give a height. Okay, and that's too big. I'm actually going to use a fixed height on this. A lot of times you don't use a fixed height and you can just let things sort of be dynamic and expand, but I think in this case we're going to use a fixed height. And for now we'll just let that be 100. Okay, so the child of this container needs to be a ListView .builder, because this is going to build based on the number of animal types that we give it. So this will be the index. And when you make a list builder, you also have to provide an item count. And the item count here is going to be, what did I call it? Animal types. Animal types.length. All right. So what we're going to do here is just call a build animal icon, passing in the index. And for the moment, we can just leave it like this, right? It's because this function we have to actually build up now. Okay. Okay, there we go. I forgot the return statement. And actually, one thing we need to do here is define the direction. Scroll direction is axis dot horizontal in our case. Okay, so we've got the beginnings of something. It's extremely hideous and ugly, but we've got something going here, right? So let's go back up to the function. Okay, so if it's selected, then we want the background to be the primary color. So selected, what did I name it? And that's because I put this here in the stateful widget and not in the state. So in order to access this and to change it in set state, it has to exist in the state, obviously. So watch out for that, you guys. Okay, cool, I like that. This is scrollable, right? So that's not scrolling, but I think it could be because we don't have enough. So let's go ahead and add another one just to see what that does. Let's go ahead and just refresh the whole thing completely. Maybe it's stuck or something. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Let's get rid of the blue. Let's get rid of the blue, see what it looks like. Okay. Aha, okay. So we want to have some padding. We want this thing to start off aligned with this ideally. Right, so where's my list view padding? Inside here, I'm gonna make an inkwell parent. Actually, wait a sec. I only want to do that for this. I only want this to change if they click on the icon itself, not on the text. That's just my decision. Let's do another set state, and the selected animal index is equal to the index. Okay. Let's see if that works. Okay, cool. Let's move on to this next part, which is the list view down here. So this is the expanded. I need to find my list. Here we go, container below here. All right, so the trick here, I think I'm gonna put an expanded right off the bat here, because this list view that I'm going to put in is going to take up all of the rest of the space, and it's going to be able to scroll, right? So the rest of this space down here, it needs to be able to scroll. So that's why I'm going to put an expanded in there, and we'll see if I get an error or not. But that's something that I've seen in the past, so that's just me preparing for the worst already. Here we're going to do the same idea. This list builder needs an item count. And the item count is the animals, what did I call it? Animals dot length. So that is that class that we created earlier, the animal class. And for now, let's just return a text with I was gonna say the animal name. Let's go ahead and define each individual animal based on its location in the index. So now this variable will, for the number of animals, will contain the individual animal object. Animal.name. So that ought to be pretty simple, right? Right, okay, so now we've got the two animal names, how we would expect it. And you can see, even though there's only these two here, this takes up the whole space, even down here, and it's scrollable. That's what we wanted. Okay, so now this is probably the most difficult part. I'm thinking with these containers and these stacks and the image, this could be this could get pretty hectic here. So I'm going to try to do this here without taking any or many pauses in the video, because I want to be transparent with you guys. Like I said, the best way to learn is to make all these mistakes. So I don't know if I want to make an hour-long video where I'm making a million mistakes, or one with a million pauses in it. So that will be what we are dealing with. So let's go ahead and try to dive into this. Okay, so let's create a column to start with here that's going to have the animal information. You can see that this column is pushed all the way to the right side of that material widget. The image thing we're going to deal with as like a stack later, which is the z-axis, stacking something on top. But for the moment here, we need to push, it needs to stay left justified, but push against the right side of this material. Okay, we're starting to get Starting to get there a little bit. Let's wrap this in a padding. Just vertical though, to separate the animals from each other. Keep them apart. Let's see what we get. Separated, a little bit more, right? Deal with that. And actually, let's make this only the bottom, because I don't want padding. Right, I want this to start at the top, which it is right now. Alright, let's go back to this padding. Actually, I would like to have padding on the sides too, just not on the top. So we'll do all of the sides except okay, so we're getting somewhere now. As I said before, with the name of the animal and the row here, we really want to push that gender icon. Space between would be the ideal. That doesn't seem to have. Let's see. What are we missing here? Nope. So this had no effect. So this is a column, and this is a row inside that column. And why can't I? This column needs to be able to expand, I have the feeling. Within this row. Let's try a flex. Flexible. Okay. So now this this widget is allowing this column to expand, and you have that sized box of 100 here. So this is taking up the rest of that space. So actually this width, we're going to want to define how much of the screen this is taking up. I don't know if it's not half, it's not 50%, but maybe 40, 35, 40%. So we're going to define this width based on the screen size because we want this to adapt to other screens. So this fixed width of 100 is not going to do it anymore. So let's go way up here and get the device width. And that's done by doing a media query. .of context, .size, .width. So now we've got that. Let's go back down if we can find it again. This width of 100, we're going to use the device width. I'm going to start off with 40%. Okay, that looks okay for the time being. So this will adapt to the size of the device that this is being used on. Okay, so now this looks decent, right? It looks okay. Let's go ahead and increase the font sizes and deal with that now, because that's easy stuff. so far. All we need to do is just add the final touch, which is the image. So let's go ahead and create a stack, because that's how we're going to implement this. Okay, well, at least we've got the colors, right? That's a start. Okay, well, the width ought to be the same width that we defined for that size box that we were using before, right? Because we're stacking this right on top of the sized box that we created. So let's go ahead and just say device width. And now I'm not sure, did we say 40%? I think we said 40. What does that look like? Okay, that's not perfect. That's where I'm wondering if I shouldn't have included that padding inside the stack. I wonder if this padding ought to be on the outside. Okay, already it's better. We see that the height should be higher though, the height of this container. We obviously have a problem with the alignment here, and that's a property of the stack that we can change. Make it a stack within a stack. It's like Inception, basically. So let's make a stack. Let's say image. And then you have to define an asset image. And then this should be the animal dot image URL. Now the question is, did I define the image URL correctly? Let's just give the image a height. Oops. Height. Let's just give the same height. And width, the same width. So device width, 40%. And of course I've got the wrong URL. Okay. You see, I told you it was cute. I forgot, I should have built that up more. You guys should have had I should have a countdown in the corner. I could go back and edit that in. Put a countdown in the corner, like countdown to cuteness. Cuteness overload coming. Let's see if I can I push, where is it? I want to get that stack. If I can push the image, maybe alignment. I want to, what the heck? Oh my gosh, this is just my computer. Sometimes it doesn't allow me to access the autocomplete. Well, center? I don't know. Let's see. Okay, so clearly it was already defined as center. How about, what can we do to, can we change the height maybe? Maybe if the container is smaller. If the container is smaller than the image. Ah, okay. Let's just leave it like this. Let's change the padding actually. That's gonna bother me. That I can't let go. You know I'm not gonna let that one go. The question is, which padding is it? Padding. I will find you. Aha. Boom. Gotcha. Alright guys, I know this was a super long video. There's probably no one left here. I'm just talking to myself at this point. But we have completed the second screen. Give yourselves a pat on the back. It looks pretty good. It's pretty close to design. That is 2 of 3 screens that we were set out to create, and we are 2/3 of the way there. So hang with me. Please like or subscribe if you enjoy the content. Give me a little bit more motivation to keep making these videos. Alright guys, we'll see you on the next video. Thanks.